So the Javelin it's a destroyer class capital ship. In the spectrum of capital ships in the universe, it's actually not the biggest one. There's a couple of them above. This one is supposed to be the fast kind of search and destroy class of ship. It's made by Aegis for UEE. So the idea behind a Javelin Destroyer, this is ship for large groups of players, to probably even do a bit, like inner guild, inner clan combat. It's almost like in, let's say, a medieval MMO. That would be your castle. It's incredibly expensive to run. It's very expensive to outfit. It's quite complex to fly properly. It's definitely very, very expensive to lose. So it's going to be a ship that's being taken out by groups of players for those important tasks, or for the more kind of risky and funs of gambling and excitement. Maybe this is something you want to do and give it a go and see how you fare against maybe another fleet, and see who comes. Who's going to be victorious? Well, one of that sides is probably going to lose their ship, but that's actually quite fun.
The total length is a 470 meter roughly. It's a double size as a Hydrus, which is like a aircraft carrier, which can carry more and more crew members. So the ship is being divided by 3 different deck, like a habitation area, technical area, combat, and engineering area. I think my main focus on the habitation area, which is including the living quarters and the mess hall, and also the corridor area, medical bay. All these areas is quite, including with the military style. So, and also will give the people more feeling like cozy. You can find some of the entertainment, even like air hockey table in the mess hall area, like arcade machine, some of this stuff. So this is basically what we have that, and also we need to make those area have a quite consistent style and much more clean and softness. There's a lot of gameplay contents in the interior level. This ship just like a small town, so you can have a lot of different funny things in the ship. So you can even like a large fancy phantom windows, the lift can view the whole universe.
It's not really a multi-purpose ship like some of or pretty much most of the ships in Squadron 42 or Persistent Universe in Star Citizen. It's a destroyer, as the name implies. It has size 12 torpedo tubes on the front of the ship. The biggest torpedoes you can experience in the game. This is a ship designed to find other capital ships and do what it needs to do. It also has an array of manned anti-aircraft turrets, and it also has a contingent of marines and a dropship that it's basically just for Javelin's use, which can be used for initiating boarding actions, and also it can receive small deliveries. If the launching pad is empty, you can land a small transport ship and resupply the ship with like ammunition and stuff like that, which is gonna be quite cool, I think. So the whole process of Javelin followed fairly closely Idris. So Idris was the first capital ship created by us. Idris kind of set the visual style of the Aegis capital ships. It created first pools of modules we can build rooms and corridors out of, and I was given a task of taking this small pool and this style, and basically expand it on a ship that's much bigger. So build the first rooms out of what's already there, and then whatever kind of holes you are left with, fill it with something new. So we can kind of, instead of rebuilding stuff from scratch, you pretty much expand on what's already there. The layout of the ship was set by the original concept artists very long time ago. It had to change quite drastically. Not a lot of stuff was left in place. I'm pretty sure only like the cargo hold and the hangar and the general what kind of rooms are actually on board was left intact. But once we built what was concepted and started running inside of it, it didn't feel right. The corridors were super long. It didn't create a nice kind of gameplay loops. It was probably way too easy to defend. It wasn't interesting enough to run around, and it was a little bit confusing. So there was another pass over the interior of the ship, where we created a little bit more game-like interior, sacrificed the realism and efficiency. Like, they probably wouldn't build this ship exactly like that when it was a real ship, but realism is very often an enemy of fun, so you have to kind of spice things up a little bit from time to time. We built that again. It was a little bit better, but because we created few more corridors, we created few more areas of interest, the total length of corridors in the ship became very long. By fixing one problem, we kind of introduced another problem, which was you never really knew where you were on the ship. There were so many corridors, so many similar corners, so many similar locations that it was a little bit. I was getting confused. I didn't know where I was, and I built the thing. So we kind of went in between. We made some of the corridors shorter. We reduced the amount of corners you have to take. We made some other corridors a little bit longer, not as long as in the original concept, but just kind of long enough. And then last thing we've done, we tried to make sure, even if the corridors are on the same deck and are using the same modules, at the most extreme corridors on the port and the starboard of the ship, we introduced windows that weren't there originally. First of all, it's a very nice visual thing. You can see so much stuff. When you can see outside, and you can see all the vistas we're creating and everything. It looks really cool. And then also now you know, if you have a window in this corridor, you kind of know where you are on the ship. And then if you closer to the center, we also started introducing different kind of guidelines and like the kind of signposting and stuff like that. And I think we are in a really good place right now. Obviously the ship is almost finished, but it's much less confusing than what we kind of struggled with at the beginning.
The main thing that kind of really differentiates it is probably the amount of space we had to play with in doing it. So we could literally have a whole industrial deck. So you'll have a deck where there's all the engineering components, everything that you would think about what needs to get the ship running. It's all on one deck. We've got a habitation zone, so there's literally, it's kind of set out in much of a compartmental way. So you would generally have all your habitational stuff is in one area, all your industrial engineering stuff is in another. You've got the bridge, which has got all your ship computers and everything running in the back, and it's just really nice that we've been able to have such a big area to play around with and make everything make sense rather than shoehorning things in.
The ship, because it's quite big, we had to make different visual kind of cues for every deck. So we have the engineering deck at the bottom. You have a living quarters and kind of like the most populated deck, which is the middle deck, which is more of like a lived-in area where you have a lot of kind of leathery pillows, and it seems like much safer and nicer place to be. We called the set. The module set for it, we called it Zen, so it's like nice, and you know, you would want to be there. Obviously zero gravity, you need some safety, stuff like that. And you have top deck, which is like a technical deck where all your avionics, electronics, where all your control rooms, like the captain quarters, the armory, all those kind of rooms are. And then obviously you have a bridge at the very top. And every one of those areas has a fairly distinctive style, but they kind of work together as an aegis. So there aren't really elements you would see like the biggest building blocks. This is stuff that you will also see on Idris. The accent beams, the how the angles and how the chamfers are being sorted. But I think it has its own kind of distinctive style. I think it looks really nice. I have more room around corridors and rooms to actually start making art and giving some depth. We had to figure out a few aspects like the size of the hangar had to get bigger because there wasn't like enough room there was enough room for Redeemer, but there are other dropships in a game like the Hoplite. And there wasn't enough room when it landed. It's a little bit bigger when it landed. There wasn't really enough room for players to walk around, so we had to actually take that into consideration, which pushed on other things. And it was kind of like that. So the first 6 months was just making sense out of the layout. In that process, the ship grew quite a lot. But from that point on, it was just, I kind of understand the ship. I understood the process. I could start creating art, and that's when it kind of bloomed for me, and I'm quite happy with how it turns out, and quite proud by actually making this ship sensical. Obviously it wasn't all me, it was the whole team effort. Once the first kind of foundations were laid out, other team members came in. It was between from 2 to, I think, like at the peak we had like 9 artists working over a couple of weeks, especially on the bridge and other areas. So obviously there is like my input at that point was like I was just a part of the team, but like I think the whole team made amazing work with the whole ship, and I'm quite excited for everyone to see what we've done with it.
We've spent a lot of time going back and forth with art and basically saying, you know, if this section of the ship goes down, we need to be able to close doors here. If we lose oxygen in this room, we need to shut that off. And it's been a lot of back and forth, but yeah, it's really making it into an actual functioning ship over just some art that's been put together.
Yes, I'm really proud actually of with the exterior, because it is another huge ship. So having any kind of high level of detail across a mesh that's that big is always a challenge. But I think with the pipeline that we have and the way that we've approached it, I think it kind of holds up really well, even quite close up. So and I do actually really like the design of the Javelin exterior with the kind of 2 forks at the front of the ship. Yeah, so one of the coolest parts of the Javelin exterior is the large turret on the top and the bottom of the ship. It kind of runs along the spine of the ship, and when they're not in use, they tuck away to the back of the ship. So when these systems come online, you see the turrets actually move along the track to kind of, you know, take down targets, and that's one of the coolest features on the exterior.
On the art production side, I think the production pipeline, we focus to especially like create the interior. You know, this ship is quite huge and large. What we think about is how to build the ship fast, decent. So we just create like a modular access library. We create a different variation modular access piece. You can just like building a house to make it a different combination. We have a standard one, like a wall, ceiling, floor. So we can have a lot of different materials. So can combine each other, even like create a longer, you can expand the room larger and make the room smaller. So that's what we call the modular access library.
The type of player who's going to use this is somebody who was lucky enough to buy one of the limited ones that we sold, to be honest. It's somebody who wants to really be part of the verse. They want to be one of these few owners of this enormous gargantuan ship, and the kind of person who wants to work with a crew, the kind of person who wants to employ people on board and really make it feel as though they're living and breathing in the verse and not just tootling around in their own little ship. It's, you know, managing a crew and going on huge missions and huge missions basically. I'd say it's easily one of the most interesting things I've ever had to work on, because just the scale of it and just the complexity of what you have to think about, because you're kind of designing your own little world inside a ship rather than just a ship that functions into stuff, because there's so much going on. You have to think about how this gets impacted by other players working alongside you while you're the owner of the ship. And yeah, it's been really interesting to work on.